Hi everyone, my name is Max Söderlund and with me I have Sepideh Davoudi, Product Manager. And today we're going to chat about a topic that's been raising its head among, I guess, specifically software vendors and larger companies within Europe as of late, being the question of build or buy when it comes to access points and infrastructure within e-invoicing. And this is one of those questions that has been popping up every now and then when we talk with CIOs and CFOs and finance process leads. Should they build their own e-invoicing infrastructure, or should they actually partner up with an operator? And when we hear companies say that they're doing e-invoicing in-house, it usually means one of two things. Either they're developing and maintaining their own access point or network connection, or then they've stitched together internal processes to distribute invoices via email, PDFs, or custom APIs. And I guess from what we've seen in the field, building and certifying your own access point is really a significantly major project. It's not just a sprint. It's typically a 12 to 24 month even effort before you're in production. So you could say that the cost of opportunity there is really huge during this time. Internal teams are tied up to solving non-core challenges like building message validation layers, managing certificates, and running interoperability tests instead of focusing on the actual business improvement. And in contrast, we have the companies who might go for the partnership route, where the same connectivity usually can be integrated somewhere in between 3 to 9 months on a fixed subscription model, meaning that the timeline and risk profiles are almost reversed. But you in your role as a product manager have obviously seen countless do's and don'ts in the field. So regarding this timeline of 1 to 2 years before go live for the ones going with the do-it-yourself model, from your perspective, what drives that duration?
That's a 1 to 2 year timeline that takes companies to build Peppol access point and making it production ready. Usually comes from a combination of technical, compliance, and operational challenges. The first category is technical and technical integration. It means that the company needs to build the software from very scratch, and they need to handle sending and receiving messages, verification of documents, and retries, and also incident error handling. And also the company needs to cover edge cases and error scenarios, and they also should try to integrate with ERP and internal systems. So it's the technical part. The next part is compliance and certification part, which is a real big headache for companies.
Can imagine.
There are a lot of updates from Peppol, and they should take care of them with a lot of attention, because a little small mismatch in formatting, for instance, can lead to rejection of the documents. So they need to take care of that. And also, they need to set up TLS, digital signing, encryption, and certificates. And they also need to making it up and running all the time. So it's not a one-time task. It's something which is going to be constantly working and operating. And the last area, or the last category, is operational challenges. Companies need to design monitoring, logging, alerting, and incident handling systems in place. And also they need to test the workflows under real-world scenarios. They need to ensure that their system is scalable. So it means that they can add new partners and higher volumes of documents to their system without any kind of breaking in the system. So in summary, I can say that there are different kinds of challenges there. that takes 1 to 2 years from companies to build their own access point. And these challenges include mostly technical integration and not just technical integration. It's the maybe easiest part of it. And the most difficult part are related to compliance and operational tasks.
And for, I guess, the underlying reasons for why companies would build themselves is obviously the control, the customization options, and the data sovereignty they have. And for some, that might make sense, particularly if they do have this deep internal IT and tax compliance capacity to cover all the areas you just mentioned. And they have that readiness. But of course, what we also consistently hear is that it might not even be the first build they do that turns out to be the problem, so to say. It's actually the maintenance cycle. As you said, once live, you're responsible for the monitoring and implementing every new regulatory rule and format changed across all the jurisdictions where you operate. And we've seen companies spending months, or in the worst case, even year plus, on problems that operators solved years ago. What would you say is the real impact of that on the business?
The impact is hidden, but I think a real business drag. Companies who decide to build the access point in-house usually underestimate how many concerns and how many problems have been solved by these access point operators. And the consequences usually show up in 4 important areas. The first one is a delayed time to market. When the companies need to focus on edge cases or compliance updates or real-world scenarios, and they usually cannot onboard customers immediately or cannot start sending and receiving messages. And so they will not have the revenue. So this delayed time to market would harm the businesses a lot. The next one is a higher cost than the thing that they were expecting at very first place. It is usually like that. They estimated that the cost is going to be cheaper if they build it inside the company. But it usually turns out to be more expensive if the company factors in really precious time of a senior engineering team and the retries after failures, and also maintenance time, and also the time that they need to put for compliance updates. So the cost is going to be even higher at the end. And the next part, which is usually overlooked by companies, is operational burden. When companies build the API at very first, they are on happy path. But when their system goes under real-world scenarios like expiry of certification or failures or retries and audit failures, they see that they are getting a lot of customer support tickets, and they go under a lot of pressure from customers, and maybe they may face some kind of reputational damage as well. And last but not the least is focus drift. When companies decide to build the access point in-house, and they are actually deciding to focus on Peppol plumbing instead of building something which is a really differentiator in their own business, a thing which makes them competitive in the market and brings them real value. So in summary, I can say that the cost of this project is not just the months of build time. It's the momentum that was lost, the delayed revenue, and also operational burden that somehow the team has to bear. So there are the consequences.
Yeah, so in other words, there may be or are usually quite a few unwelcome surprises. The companies might not, as you said, be able to reliably budget or foresee what everything will entail if they go for the building themselves. But when it then comes to the operators and how they automate these updates and the whole process, can you give some insight into how they do it and why this might be, as you already went into a bit, so difficult to replicate for those trying to do it in-house?
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, operators look at the compliance as a living, continuous system, not just a one-off project. They closely track regulations and Peppol updates all the time. They pre-model the changes, and they do the development of updates based on configurative rules and automation, not just rewriting the codes every time again. And they test the changes on the new system under real-world scenarios, and also try to develop and set up systems for monitoring, alerting, and also rollback. If something happens, they would need those systems. So it's not just coding, it's mostly an operating model, a complete operation model. So we know that product teams are mostly focused and trained to build product features, not a permanent compliance machine. Yeah, it's like a real permanent compliance machine. It's not just a feature or a small change that can be done by a code or something, but it's a real important complex system. And that's why I would say it's the thing that operators can do it easily and very efficiently, because their teams and the system of these operators are built for this. And when it comes to handle it inside a company and not outsourcing it to operators, they cannot do it easily, because they have to add a new operation model, a new operation thing to their current system. And it doesn't make sense, and they cannot do that successfully usually.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I guess that's one of the underlying reasons why many organizations also eventually conclude that maintaining a fully certified access point isn't really where they want to spend their resources. And in those cases, partnering with an operator or qualified service provider means that all of the regulatory updates, the certificate renewals, format changes, et cetera, of course, are automated as part of that service. And again, the risk profile shifts. Instead of internal staff chasing regulatory change or maintaining all of this, the operator's compliance framework basically absorbs it. And when talking to, for instance, IT managers, what we hear is that this consistency becomes one of the key benefits. It happens in the background, and the systems stay compliant, they can focus on their core business, and so on. And of course, another aspect of this whole discussion is that future-proofing is also extremely important for the customer base, whether it's regarding the domestic capabilities, but also, I guess, the all-around growing need for cross-border growth and traffic that's also in demand. And even though if domestic coverage would be enough for some right now, this might change very soon in the future. But would you agree with this? And where do you see that companies tend to find the most value when it comes to choosing a partner instead of building things by themselves?
Yes. When companies want to partner up with an operator, they usually are looking for scalability, they are looking for reliability, compliance, and also predictability. Yeah. They prioritize these factors over control and customization, because if they build it in-house, they will have the control and customization, but they will lose reliability, scalability, compliance, and maybe they will have to bear a lot of operational challenges, as I mentioned. And speed is another important factor as well. They care about the speed. They want to enter the market really fast. They want to start sending and receiving invoices really quickly. They don't want to wait for so long. So the first important thing is faster time to market. With partnering up with these operators, they can immediately start sending and receiving invoices. They can start immediately onboarding new customers, and the revenue would be there for them. And they don't need to care about and be worried about operational challenges.
True.
The access point operator or the solution provider will take care of it completely. They have monitoring systems, and they have really rigid alerting systems. And they have been trained for this. They can take care of it very efficiently. And so this is how the company members can focus on the most important things. And also about compliance and certification. These operators are Peppol-certified. They are officially Peppol-certified. And they track closely Peppol updates. And by an automatic system, they make the changes inside their company. And so they are there to help the companies with compliance and certification as well. In that case, companies don't need to worry about message failures anymore or audit fails, which is a great concern for many companies. And the partner, the operator, will handle that very thoroughly. And as I mentioned, the scalability, again, is really important. They want to add new partners whenever they want. They want to cover any kind of documents. They want to expand to new regions. They want to handle higher volumes of documents. And operators can help them with that because their systems are scalable. And also another important factor here is predictability.
Yeah, of course.
When you work with an operator and partner up with them, you know the cost, you know the fixed costs. It's based on transaction or it's subscription fee, but you know the amount and it's predictable. But when you decide to build that yourself, you don't know the exact time that it would take. And a lot of things would be added to the procedure, and also maintenance cost, which is a hidden cost, can also be taken into consideration as well. So because of this predictability, scalability, reliability, and also faster time to market and compliance, I would say that it's better for companies to decide to partner up with operators who are specialized in this domain.
Yeah, makes absolute sense. And what would you then say that's the biggest difference companies notice when they make the switch?
I would say it's peace of mind. Companies suddenly start to trust operators when they see that the invoices are delivered in time without any problems. The compliance and updates are handled very easily, and they can scale their system without breaking the whole system.
Yep.
And the security things are treated really well and efficiently. It's the moment that they start not to worry about operational challenges, operational headache. And they start to focus on initiatives that drive differentiation and competitive edge, not just operational things.
Yeah. I get that. And I guess looking at the big picture again, quite recently a CFO told me when they decided to go for building themselves that they thought that they were building a connection, but in real life they built a department, which is very much true when you reflect that on what you just said regarding the effort you need to put in. And then that's really what happens when an internal project becomes a living compliance organism, right? And of course, partnering doesn't erase all the challenges or all the questions you need to take in consideration, but it does, of course, change which ones you own. So there are different types of paths and vendors you can take. You can
Yeah.
do it all by yourself, or you can use a limited service provider, these sort of light access points, or then you can go the route of having a full-blown service provider that has comprehensive APIs, for instance, to cater to all types of needs. And I think what we've also seen is that nowadays we have these modern middle ground approaches as well, meaning that companies can choose a balance of their preference instead of going to either extremes. So at least I think that we've more frequently now seen this type of hybrid thinking where companies build what's core for them, like say their ERP integration and internal routing logic, but then they can rely on a certified operator for the access point, scanning, long-term archiving, and so on. And others might, for instance, keep the control of the outbound invoice logic, but plug into external lifecycle tools for receivables management, dunning, or analytics. So in other words, it's a modular setup. You maintain control in the areas where it adds value to you, but then you can outsource the ones where you see that it might carry volatility or uncertainty for the companies.
Mm-hmm.
But have you found any, or have you been able to pinpoint any specific places where companies usually draw the boundary between where they want to own things internally and where they prefer to outsource?
What companies decide to build in-house are usually the thing that directly differentiate the thing that company offers their product or service, directly differentiation. And things like business processes or data, when it comes to accounting logic, for instance, or integration with ERPs, customer experience, interaction with users or analytics, and also strategic control points. Things like internal reporting or custom integration, and also pricing model. There are the important things that companies usually decide to do themselves, not outsource it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to outsourcing things, we usually see that companies outsource when they want to have something which is necessary, but just to work, which is commoditized mostly, and not it doesn't create any kind of competitive advantage for the company. It's just necessary, but just to work.
Yeah.
And in that regard, companies usually outsource the thing, like compliance, as I mentioned, and BIS updates, Peppol regulation updates, certification of Peppol, renewal of this certification and all the processes, and the Peppol test network approval, as I mentioned also. Yeah. And they're all commodities, I would say. They are necessary, but doesn't add some value to the company. And also security things, which are mostly setting up TLS or signing, digital signing or encryption or certificates. And companies need to manage the certificates because, for instance, outdated certificates would cause the whole system to break. And that's why these tasks can be outsourced really easily and more efficiently. So in summary, I would say that companies decide to build in-house the things that are important to their core business, strategic things, and outsource the things which are necessary but commoditized and doesn't add any kind of differentiation and a strategic competitive edge to their business.
True. Yeah. And what would you say is the underlying reasoning maybe behind this rule of thumb?
Well, the underlying reasoning. I think we can do the cost-benefit analysis. And when the cost-benefit analysis justifies, we can clearly justifies. We can choose to build something. And if it doesn't justify, we should outsource it. So it doesn't mean that when you can build something, you should build that. Maybe you can build something, but it's really costly and it will end up a really expensive project. And also your team cannot focus on important things. In most cost-benefit analysis that usually businesses do, we can see that it's not reasonable to build it in-house. So buying it from operators would be a better, reasonable, and efficient option here.
Yeah. And then, of course, looking ahead, we, with a fair amount of certainty, can say that the regulatory landscape, at least, isn't slowing down. We have Peppol's expansion going on, various CTC mandates, of course, VAT in the digital age within Europe. So the rate of change will definitely keep accelerating. And I guess the key question, or one of the key questions that companies are asking right now, isn't just the what's cheaper, it's also the what's sustainable. And can your setup actually adapt automatically whenever the next schema or reporting layer appears? Or will every update then require a new project? And I think what everyone should keep in mind is indeed that the biggest cost isn't the implementation, but how rigid things become. And once you're locked into a custom build, adapting to the new mandates become an uphill climb. But how should companies then evaluate whether their current approach is indeed future-proof or not?
Based on my experience, companies need to consider some factors. First, they should check if their system can be updated easily or not. And they should make sure that their system is modular, so updating a part of the system wouldn't disrupt the entire system or the other parts of the core business systems. Scalability is next factor. Can they add new regions, new document types, and new partners without any problems, without any kind of outage or failure in the system? And the next one is efficient use of human resources. It's really important. You should pay attention to your team. Are your team members focused on strategic tasks or tasks which are related to core business, or they are just trying to keep the access point up and running all the time, and they are not focused on their main job? So the companies should try to check that to make sure that they are efficiently using the human resources. And I think another important factor here is low risk. If their system is low risk and doesn't encounter any kind of major prediction of risk in future, they can say that we are maybe future-proof. What does it mean? It means, to me, it means having backups or plans for failures. If your certification gets expired, what would you do? If your messages get rejected by Peppol, what would you do? And so you need to have backups and plans for these failures as well. So if you have all these factors in place, you can somehow make sure that you have built something which is future-proof.
So you could say that by investing in modularity and focusing on flexibility, automation, and strategic differentiation, companies will be able to get ahead of the change curve, right? Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's completely fair. By modularity, companies make sure that they can embrace compliance changes. They can observe compliance changes without disrupting the important parts of their system. And with automation and flexibility, they can make sure that the amount of manual work and also operational risk will be declined. And by also efficient use of human resources, they know that they are on the right track and their human resources are efficiently working, not just put a lot of effort and energy on building something which is not core to their business.
Yeah. So all in all, to tie everything up, the right answer to build versus buy depends entirely on your own capacity and priorities, you could say.
Yeah.
The organizations that handle this the best are the ones that make the conscious choice and know exactly what they want to own and what they'd rather let a specialist handle. And I guess we can agree that that's really the heart of it. You don't have to choose between control and compliance. You just have to be clear on which one you want to lead with. And from what we've seen, the companies that succeed with e-invoicing don't necessarily spend the most, but they allocate smartly. And they treat compliance like an infrastructure, not like a new innovation, and instead focus their energy where it creates a real business advantage.